Hi, my dear children. Good morning. Hope you're all fine. Do you remember our last history section? We had studied about Bastar Rebellion, the resistance made by the people of Bastar against the oppressive policies of colonial government. Have you heard about Indonesia? You must have studied, you must have learned a lot of information. Indonesia is the largest nation in Southeast Asia by size. Fourth most populous country on earth. It's a geological wonderland. Java is one of the Indonesian island. Once the Indonesian islands were under the control of Dutch. There are many similarities in the laws of forest control in Indonesia and in India. Java in Indonesia is where the Dutch started forest management. Like the British in India, the Dutch in Indonesia, wanted timber from Java to build ships. There had lived one community in Java. They were Calanques. Calanques were skilled forest cutters and shifting cultivators. When the Dutch began to gain control over the forest in 18th century, they tried to make the Calanques work under them. But the Calanques resisted in 1770. But unfortunately, their resistance was suppressed by the Dutch. Like the British introduced forest laws in India, the Dutch enacted forest laws in Java. Here too, it restricted the poor villagers' access to forest. They gave permission to cut the wood, but on one condition. Wood could only be cut for a specified purposes like making river boats, constructing houses, and only from specific forest under close supervision. Villagers were punished for grazing cattle, transporting wood without a permit, or traveling on forest roads with horse carts or cattle. The Dutch first imposed rents on land being cultivated in the forest and then exempted some villagers from these rents if they worked collectively to provide free labor and buffaloes for cutting and transporting timber. Certain groups were exempted. That's what we learned. Certain groups were exempted from paying the taxes, from paying the rent, on one condition. They should help the government in cutting and transporting timber. Were they happy to pay the rent? No, they were not at all ready to pay the rent. Around 1890, a gentleman, Surontico Zamin, began questioning the state ownership of the forest. According to him, the government has no role in the creation of wind, water, earth, and wood, so they can't claim any control on it. It became a widespread movement as Saminist movement. Some of the Saminists protested by laying down on their land when the Dutch came to survey it, while others refused to pay taxes or fine or perform labor. It became a mass movement against the Dutch colonial government. The First World War had a devastating impact on the forests of Java. When the Dutch made sure that they are going to lose the control of the forests of Java, these areas will be under the control of the Japanese, they made a trick, they made a strategy. What was that? They destroyed sawmills and burning huge piles of giant teak logs so that they would not fall into the Japanese hands. What did the Japanese do in Indonesia, in Java? They exploited the forest recklessly without further thought or for their own war industries, forcing forest villagers to cut down forests. Many villagers used this as an opportunity to expand cultivation in the forests. War got over. After the war, it was difficult for the Indonesian Forest Service to get this land back. Attitudes were changing towards forestry. Since 1980s, government across Asia and Africa began to think in different ways. Conservation of forest rather than collecting timber has become more important goal. The government has recognized that in order to meet this goal, the people who live near the forest must be involved. In many cases, across India, from Mizoram to Kerala, dense forests have survived only because of the protection of the villagers. Some villages some villages have been patrolling their own forest, with each household taking it in turns instead of leaving it to the forest gods, which means the villagers were ready to protect their own area instead of giving it into the hands of forest gods. Hi children, shall we stop for the time being? Did you understand these parts? Let us revise. You have two questions. First is related to Dutch scientific forestry. Try to remember all those points we discussed. And the second one is about the new developments in forestry. That's what we studied as the last part. Try to find answer. Thank you.